Hi and welcome. This is Homebody Rundown and I'm HR. This is week 4 of a 6-week pantry challenge. The goal is to use up more of the foods that we already have in the house, in the pantry, the refrigerators, and the freezers. And the freezers and the pantry tend to be pretty well stocked. We shop at bulk stores like Costco and Sam's, also online at Azure Standard, and I like to buy items when they're on sale. But this means that sometimes I have quite a few items that are getting closer to their expiration dates, and Pantry Challenge is a good way to go through what I have and make sure I'm using up items before they go bad. We don't eat much meat, so most of the foods that you'll see in this video are vegetarian or pescatarian, but we are not strict with it. I am still shopping during the Pantry Challenge and buying perishables like dairy, produce, and eggs, and I will put the total amount that I spend in the description, along with just some more details of how I'm setting up Pantry Challenge for us. And I think I say this at the beginning of all of these videos, but this is not a recipe channel. I just want to be upfront with that. There are a lot of foods in this video that I am not even going to be able to link a reference recipe because I just kind of make stuff up as I go, see what I have. But if there is a similar recipe or something that inspired me, I will link that in the description, or at least link the cookbook that I got it from. Unfortunately, not all the recipes that I use or kind of use are available online. Starting off with a chili, and I really did not have a lot of energy that I put into this. There are a lot of things that you can add into a vegetarian or a vegan chili to make it more hearty. One of our favorites is chopped walnuts. I have also added in barley, which makes it really filling, but I did not do any of that this time. This is mostly just a bean and veggie chili. I didn't even add corn, which I do that quite often. This is black beans that I had cooked from dry in the Instant Pot. I had a can of kidney beans, and I had some pre-cooked onions. That was a can of fire roasted tomatoes. This is tomato paste, and tomato products like that are staples in my pantry. I really like a lot of tomato-based foods, so I always have a lot of them on hand. Added in a whole lot of seasonings. This is probably more seasoning than most people would want, but that's what I did. I forgot to show it, but I also added in, or I forgot to show it with the other seasonings, but I added in garlic powder and onion powder as well. I started this on high for maybe an hour, and then I took it down to low and let this simmer for several hours, and it was very good. It is heavy on tomato, but I did forget to mention, I did add water into this as well and put a little shredded sharp cheddar cheese on top, and it was really good and really easy. Picked up quite a bit of produce this week. Now, things like these grapes were on sale, so I got 2, and this is going to last for more than just 1 week, but it was $50.88. These items were mostly from Costco and a few from Trader Joe's. Also picked up eggs, and I don't even know if we'll get to the eggs this week. I still have some left. And I forgot to show this. I picked up a bag of mandarin oranges at Whole Foods as well. I'm going to make hummus on this day, and I am using a jar of chickpeas. It is Jovial brand. I have been really happy with Jovial products. They seem to be very high quality, but this one was going to expire, I think, in the next week, so I wanted to use it up. The food processor was already dirty. I make a spreadable butter for us. I add in avocado, olive oil, and salt. I do keep this in the refrigerator, but we all really like to have a spreadable butter. It does end up being a little more savory than just regular butter, obviously with the olive oil and added salt. This may be gross to some people, but I did not even wipe out the food processor. I just left the butter in there. We don't care. This is not something I'm, sharing with a bunch of people. This is just for us. So it'll just have a little more fat in it. Into the food processor, I have drained and no, I did not drain and rinse the chickpeas. I just dumped it in. This is tahini. I have roasted cumin, lemon juice, and I add salt. And sometimes I'll add regular cumin. I don't always have the roasted cumin. If it needs more liquid, I will add water. If I have made the chickpeas myself, I would add in the cooking liquid. So you can see here, it's still very, I don't know what the word would be, grainy. It doesn't really taste grainy, but it definitely is not super smooth. And we don't really care about it being extremely smooth, but I like to taste it as I go because I don't follow a recipe and I need to see just how the flavor is and adjust the seasonings. This is the consistency I got it to, and it was really good. We primarily eat this with chips and veggies, but it's also nice if you wanted to make a veggie wrap with hummus. This is a cast iron pan, and I melted a little bit of butter, and I'm just getting that around the sides and bottom because I'm going to make a cornbread. I had made the chili the day before, and I had intended to make cornbread the same day, but like I said, I wasn't feeling a lot of energy on that day, so I thought I'd make the cornbread today, and it sounded good because it is like this outside, very cold. I'm only adding 1 egg today. There are times when I add 2 eggs or 2 egg whites, but just going back to more of the original recipe, getting the cornmeal in here. And I do use the KitchenAid mixer. It wouldn't be too terrible to mix this by hand, but if it's clean, I like to use the whisk attachment on here. I did microwave the butter. I always add melted butter into the cornbread. We do not eat all of this cornbread at once, so I do freeze part of it, and it freezes and defrosts really well. Getting the dry ingredients in here and getting this mixed really thoroughly. The cornmeal I use is a more coarse cornmeal, and I think next time I'm going to pick up something more fine. It just makes for a better cornbread for us. Now with the KitchenAid mixer, I do have to take a spatula and just make sure that all the ingredients got mixed in. A lot of times there are some dry ingredients still stuck on the bottom. I do try to get this leveled out as much as I can, just so there's not a really tall spot in the middle when it bakes. Here's how it looks, and I do cook mine or bake it a couple minutes less than what the recipe calls for because my oven seems to run a little more hot. Plus, I let it sit in the pan for, I don't know, 15-20 minutes usually before I attempt to flip it out of the pan, so it is still baking while it's in there. The cast iron retains the heat really well. But it usually releases out of the pan very easily. It is a very seasoned cast iron pan. I think it's one my husband got from his parents. And as you saw, I generously butter it before I add in the batter. Here's how it looks. And so you can really see more of the pieces of the corn because it is more coarsely ground. These are pie crusts that I had bought at Whole Foods when they were on sale, and they've been in the freezer a while. It's a 2-pack. Now, it is possible to just take one out and put the other one back in the freezer, but I went ahead and decided to make 2 things that require pie crusts. I'm going to do an apple pie and a quiche. Last month, I had apples that were getting really soft. It's one of those things where the kids are eating lots of apples and then you buy a bunch and then they're not eating apples. Oh, here I wanted to see if the crust would fit in a glass dish. It just makes it easier when you're trying to cut it. And I'm just used to baking in glass, so the timing's a little easier, but it did not. I know I have more shallow Pyrex, but I think I pack them away because I hardly ever use them. But anyway, I just went ahead, put it back into the foil pan. Like I was saying, we had apples that were getting soft, so I had gone ahead and cooked those. I peeled them, cooked them, and added the flavorings for an apple pie, and then I froze that, so I had just defrosted that pie filling. I am making a crumble topping for the pie, and I decided to use the food processor. I honestly can't remember if I've done this before or not. This is cold butter and brown sugar. And it worked really well instead of trying to, use a pastry cutter or something to get that butter chopped into the other ingredients, it crumbled it nicely. Then I went ahead and added it into a bowl of flour. I did not put the flour into the food processor. I've learned that lesson. Especially on this little food chopper, it just poofs out everywhere. So here's how it looks. Very crumbly. Got the seasonings in there as well. And then I'll put this over the top. And it made quite a bit. It was pretty thick, crunchy topping, but it was very good. I did put a tray under the pie, and spoiler alert, I'm really glad I did. For the quiche, I do add turmeric. I have garlic salt, onion powder, garlic powder, parsley. I had a new container of feta cheese, and I'm also going to add salt and black pepper. I added a small amount of milk. If I have heavy cream, I'll add a couple tablespoons of that instead. Getting this mixed up in the KitchenAid with the seasonings. Here's the feta. I like to buy this one at Whole Foods. It is vegetarian. I am going to slice off the amount that I want to use for the quiche, and then I'll put the rest of it back into the brine. This has a really easy to cut texture, which is nice, and then it crumbles very easily as well. Personally, I really like this feta. I think it has great flavor. Of course, it's feta. It's very salty, especially probably since it just came out of the brine. But I'm getting that crumbled up before I add it into the mixture. And then I realized I want to use some feta in another recipe or another dish, so I'm crumbling up feta to use later in a pasta dish. I have shallot that I diced up, and then I also pulled some of that to use in the pasta later as well. Into the pie crust, I have the shallot, the feta. I had cherry tomatoes that I sliced in half, and then here's the egg mixture. And it is so dark because of the turmeric. Also, this is mostly egg whites. I am not sure. There were maybe 3 or 4 egg yolks out of 8, 9 eggs in this. I did cover it with foil for probably over half of the baking time. Here's the pie. It looks fantastic, but as you can see, the juices float out over the edges in multiple places. So I'm really glad that I put it into or had a cookie sheet underneath it. But once again, it is a more shallow pie plate. Here's how it looked. It tasted great. It was so easy too, since I already had the pie filling ready to go and a pre-made pie crust. This did not take long. We were not going to eat all of it probably quickly enough, so I did put a few slices into the freezer for later. Here's the quiche. I was worried because it is a more shallow baking pan that I did not use as many eggs as I normally do, and I could have. It had quite a bit of crust sticking up there on the edge, but the feta and the tomatoes in here were wonderful. It tasted great, and once again, another easy thing because I had the pre-made pie crust. I am cooking penne pasta. It is a whole wheat pasta, and I was proud of myself for remembering to not make as much since the boys are not home. That is a real thing that I have to get used to doing. I've heard other people make jokes about that when their kids leave, that they're still making these massive quantities of food. And yeah, I get it. It's hard to make a small amount. It seems inefficient. But anyway, into this enameled cast iron, I have the shallot that I had diced up earlier, more of those cherry tomatoes I cut in half, the seasonings, it's a little bouillon, red pepper flakes, olive oil. I had roasted garlic. This is something that I make from a large bag of peeled garlic. I roast it in the oven with olive oil, and then I have it on hand when I need it. Frozen peas, I added in some water. So I had made the pasta earlier in the day, and I did not have any pasta water. So if I did, I would have added pasta water just to help thicken the sauce, and crumbled feta. So just a quick, easy dinner, and it tasted pretty good. Going to modify our chocolate chip cookie recipe by adding in some of these caramel sea salt baking chips. I picked these up at Trader Joe's a while ago. It's one of those items that's just been sitting in the pantry. I hadn't really decided what to use it for, and I'm going to replace part of the chocolate chips in this with those and sprinkle a little salt on top and see how that goes. The other modification I'm doing is normally I try to add a little bit of, healthiness when I make desserts. And so a common thing that I do is replace part of the all-purpose flour with whole wheat flour. But I just wanted to make a really delicious cookie this time, and I am only using all-purpose flour. Here's how the batter's looking so far. Getting the rest of the ingredients, the dry ingredients in, and then adding in the chocolate chips. Now, I believe I also added in more chocolate chips. Normally, I only add in 1 cup. This was a little more than a cup. Here's the dough. Looks really nice. It's definitely less dense without using the whole wheat flour. I sprinkled a little bit of salt on here. It was kosher salt, but I should have done that before I kind of flattened the cookie dough down. It was really mounded up from the scoop, and it would have had more crevices to fall into if I had done that. So you can see there's not a lot of salt stuck on the top of these, but they baked really well, and they definitely were very good. I had tried one of these caramel chips by itself, and it was okay, but in the cookie with the chocolate, it was a really good combination. Okay, I did not film much of anything here. I was very hungry and I did not want to take the time. Got out a ton of spices, and then I had cooked brown rice, cooked black beans, and some frozen sweet corn. Added that all in with some tomato and made a quick black bean and rice soup, and it was really good. Another baking project, I am making blueberry muffins. I think I have all the ingredients out here, including the flour, and I did replace part of the all-purpose with whole wheat flour. I use frozen blueberries in this. That's what I've always done. I don't know that I've ever made a blueberry muffin with fresh blueberries. We just enjoy eating fresh blueberries so much. I replace part of the sugar with maple syrup and getting all these wet ingredients mixed together, and then, plus milk. I had not planned ahead, so I had not mixed up any whole milk from powder. This is just the lactose-free milk I had in the refrigerator. Getting the dry ingredients in there, and then unfortunately I had run out of muffin liners, paper muffin liners, and I always use those. I think it was one of those things where I had bought a bunch and I had originally just had so many on hand that it just did not process that I needed to pay attention, and I had run out. I think I had 2 left when I made these, so I sprayed the ceramic baking dishes with avocado oil. And they came out pretty well. I think I had one that kind of stuck more than this, but here's how it looks inside. Okay, they do not all have this many blueberries. This one was a winner. It had a lot in it. But these are very good, and like I said, they're not, I don't know if I said, but they're not overly sweet. A quick breakfast sandwich. I have more croissants from the freezer and breakfast sausages. These are vegan breakfast sausages. It's Beyond brand. And I'm going to add in some roasted red peppers from a jar, putting them in the food chopper just to get them processed. I did drain them first. There's still a lot of moisture in here, but this is way easier than doing it by hand. But I do have a dishwasher because when I use these food processors and food choppers, this is stuff that it creates a lot of dishes and it takes up space in the dishwasher. So I do run my dishwasher frequently. Adding in the chopped peppers to the chopped sausage. And I had added avocado oil into the pan when I made the sausage. Just mixing in the eggs a bit, and then seasonings are black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. I have it mixed together in this jar, and also garlic salt. going to stir the seasonings through, and then I just let it sit and cook on the stovetop. Another option would be to just slide the cast iron into the oven and let it bake, but I had the time. I just let it cook on the stove, and when it was done, I added shredded sharp cheddar on the top. I let it sit on there for a couple minutes and it melted, and then I just used the spatula to cut kind of a croissant football shape out of the egg bake, and this was my best one, the first one. I think I nailed it on this, but I went ahead and cut out the shape for the rest of them, and there were just a few bites of egg and sausage left in the pan. I had one little slicing tomato left, so I added that onto a couple of these, and this was very good. And it was nice to get these croissants out of the freezer because they are a bulky item and take up quite a bit of room. I defrosted some bean and barley soup, and I went ahead and added another jar of tomatoes to it, put it in the crock pot, added some cheese just to make a very quick lunch. And it was pretty good. It wasn't great because I should have added more seasoning since I added the tomato. Defrosting frozen shrimp, I get this at Costco, and this Beyond brand hot Italian style sausage. Also got out Spanish rice, and I'll get that defrosted as well. For dinner, I was going to make something more elaborate. I did not. I got out buns and meatless chicken patties from the freezer, and that was what I made for dinner. Final item for this video is, well, I'm not going to call it a gumbo. I'm going to call it a gumbo-inspired stew. It has okra in it. I'm using that vegan sausage. I do have the shrimp. This is real shrimp. It's not fake vegan shrimp. Crushed tomatoes, lots of seasonings, and I have more of that frozen garlic, and I have frozen diced onions. I think I'm down to my last onion, fresh onion. I cooked all 4 of these sausages, but I'm not using all of this in the gumbo. I pulled that out, and then part of it I put in the refrigerator. Cooking the shrimp now, and once that's done, I'm pulling that out as well. And into those drippings, I'm going to go ahead and cook the onions by themselves just because they are frozen and they have a lot of moisture they're going to release. I did add a little more oil into the pan. So cooking all of this in stages definitely made it take longer. But especially the vegetarian or vegan sausages, if you want them to get any kind of, crispiness or anything like that, I don't want to cook it with vegetables, anything with moisture. Now I am going to make a roux with butter and flour. I did not follow a recipe on this. I had looked at several gumbo recipes just to try to get the right flavors, but then I did find a vegetarian gumbo recipe, and I will link that, but I did not follow it, of course. I originally wanted to only make about half the amount, and so here I only made about half the amount of roux because I didn't know if my husband would like it with the okra. Years and years ago, I had made gumbo, like real gumbo, and I had a feeling he wasn't a huge fan of it, and that's why I never made it again. But here I have the okra in here, getting the rest of the veggies in. I did decide to add Worcestershire sauce, which is not in the recipe that I am linking in the description. I just really like that flavor. And just note, the type of Worcestershire that I use is not vegetarian. It has anchovies in it. Obviously, I am not making a vegetarian gumbo since I have the shrimp in here anyway, but you can get a vegetarian version. I think Annie's makes one. Anyway, getting everything in here, and I'm going to let it simmer for a while. Part of the really time-consuming part on making the gumbo is the roux. I did let it cook for 20 minutes, and I kept whisking it every, minute or two, and this turned out wonderful. I think it was loaded with flavor. I really liked it. It was not a gumbo. I have had gumbo before. Like I said, I made it in the past, and I think the biggest issue was I just didn't make enough roux, because then I ended up adding in way too many vegetables. So it was very diluted, but it had lots of great flavor, and I think I will make it again, but I don't know that I'll make it the same way. Able to use up a lot of pantry items like cornmeal and the chickpeas that were going to expire soon, and also a lot of freezer items. Got the pie crust and the croissants and some pre-made soup out of the freezer, which was good. I think our favorite items had to be the pie and the cookies. Those were awesome. But then, like I said, I really did enjoy that stew at the end. Just, it had so much flavor. As always, thank you so much for watching.